In this video, I'm going to show you 7 signs your body is quietly giving you right now. Things you've probably brushed off as aging. Things like tingling that comes and goes, feet that puff up by the end of the day, small cuts that take forever to heal, skin that stays dry no matter what you put on it. None of these seem like a big deal on their own, but together, they tell a very specific story. And once you know what to look for, you cannot unsee it. The first sign is the one that surprises people the most, and there's a good chance it's happening to you right now, without you even realizing it. The moment your body starts speaking quietly. You probably would not be able to name the exact day this started. Maybe it was on a colder morning when your feet touched the floor and the chill felt different. Maybe it lasted longer than it should have and stayed with you even after the rest of your body warmed up. Or maybe it happened at night, with the room warm, the blanket over your legs, and your feet still feeling strangely cold. Most people brush that moment aside and tell themselves it is just part of getting older. But the body rarely changes in complete silence. It usually whispers before it ever interrupts your life in a bigger way. It sends small signs first, subtle changes that are easy to explain away when they still feel manageable. And the feet, more than most people realize, are often one of the first places where those quiet messages appear. That is why this topic matters more than it may seem at first. Your feet sit at the far end of circulation. They are one of the most distant points from the heart, where blood flow has the longest trip to make. So when circulation becomes a little slower, a little weaker, or a little less responsive, the feet often notice first. What feels like a temperature issue on the surface may actually be the body revealing a deeper pattern underneath. And after 60, those patterns become easier to miss, precisely because they arrive so gradually. This does not mean every cold foot is a warning of something serious. It means the signal is worth reading, instead of dismissing automatically. A smart first step is to notice when it happens, how long it lasts, and whether it shows up even in a warm room. Pay attention to whether your feet warm up after movement or stay cold, even when the rest of you feels comfortable. That kind of simple observation can tell you more than people think. And this is where the conversation becomes useful, not frightening. Because once you start recognizing the body's quieter signals, you stop treating them like random annoyances. You begin to see patterns, and patterns give you time to respond with calm and common sense. That matters more after 60, when small changes often shape comfort, mobility, and confidence in everyday life. And the next sign makes that pattern even clearer. Why the feet often reveal circulation changes. First, think about a large, older house with long pipes running to the farthest bathroom. The water still gets there, but it takes longer, arrives with less force, and cools faster along the way. Your feet work in a very similar position inside the body. They sit at the far edge of circulation, far from the heart, and dependent on steady flow through smaller vessels. That is why small circulation changes often show up there before they feel obvious anywhere else. When the heart pushes blood out, the body still has to deliver warmth, oxygen, and nutrients all the way down to the toes. That trip becomes a little harder when blood vessels lose some flexibility with age or spend too much time constricted. After 60, that kind of change is not unusual, and it does not always come with dramatic symptoms at the beginning. It often begins as slower warming, easier cooling, or feet that feel less comfortable during long periods of sitting. The body is still working, but the delivery system may be a little less efficient than it used to be. This is where many people make a very common mistake. They assume cold feet are only about room temperature, socks, or weather outside. Sometimes that is true, but the pattern matters more than the moment. If your feet feel colder than the rest of your body again and again, especially indoors, the signal may be deeper than comfort alone. The symptom is not just coldness, but what that coldness may be saying about circulation behind the scenes. A useful thing to do this week is compare situations rather than guessing. Notice whether your feet stay cold after you have been sitting for a long time, and whether they warm up after a short walk. Notice whether they feel different in the morning, in the evening, or after you move your ankles and calves for a minute. That simple test gives you a practical clue, because circulation often responds to movement before anything else. And when a sign changes with movement, it usually tells you the body is asking for better flow, not just more blankets. This may sound like a small detail, but it changes how you read the rest of the video. Once you understand that the feet are often an early mirror of circulation, the signal becomes easier to respect. You stop treating every change like a mystery and start seeing a pattern that can be observed calmly. That alone gives you more control than most people realize. And the next sign is one that many older adults notice without connecting it to circulation at all. Sign number 1. Feet that stay cold even indoors. You are sitting in your usual chair, maybe watching television or reading something light. The room is warm, your upper body feels comfortable, and yet your feet still feel cold. You pull on thicker socks, shift your position, maybe even tuck them under a blanket, and still, the cold lingers longer than it used to, almost like it is ignoring the environment around you. Most people pause for a moment, then dismiss it as something harmless and move on. But when feet stay cold in a warm environment, the body is often showing something specific. It usually means that warm blood is not reaching the feet with the same efficiency as before. Think of it like a gentle drop in water pressure at the far end of a system, where everything still flows, just not as strongly. After 60, blood vessels can become slightly less responsive, and circulation may take longer to adjust. So the warmth that should arrive easily now arrives more slowly, or sometimes not fully at all. What makes this sign important is not the cold itself, but the pattern behind it. If it happens once in a while, it may not mean much. But if your feet regularly feel colder than the rest of your body, especially indoors, it becomes something worth noticing. Many people assume this is simply age and stop paying attention too early. But the body rarely repeats a signal without a reason, even when that reason is still mild. A simple step you can take, starting today, is to test how your body responds to movement. Stand up, walk for 2 or 3 minutes, or gently raise and lower your heels while holding onto a chair. Notice whether your feet begin to warm up after that small effort. If they do, it often means circulation is still responsive and just needs more frequent activation. That is not a problem. It is a direction your body is quietly pointing you toward. And this is where I would say something honest and simple. If this kind of explanation helps you see your body a little more clearly, it is worth staying connected to this kind of content. Not for the sake of a button, but because understanding these patterns early makes a real difference over time. Most people only connect the dots much later, when the signals become harder to ignore. You are doing something smarter by paying attention now. And the next sign is one that feels completely different, but often comes from the same root. Sign number 2. Tingling that appears without a clear reason. You are sitting quietly, maybe watching something familiar or resting after a simple task. Nothing unusual is happening, and then suddenly your toes begin to tingle. It feels like small pins or a light buzzing sensation that was not there a moment ago. You shift your foot, adjust your position, and wait for it to pass. And often it does, which is why most people do not think much about it at first. But tingling is not random when it starts showing up more often. It is usually the nervous system reacting to changes in how signals are being delivered and supported. Nerves depend on steady blood flow to receive oxygen and nutrients that keep them stable. When that supply becomes slightly inconsistent, even briefly, the nerves can respond with irregular sensations. It is like a light flickering when the electrical current is not fully stable. After 60, this becomes more common for simple reasons. Longer periods of sitting, subtle changes in blood vessel flexibility, and slower circulation can all play a role. The body is still functioning, but the timing and consistency of delivery may shift. Many people assume it is just posture or pressure, and sometimes it is. But when tingling happens without a clear trigger and repeats over time, the pattern deserves attention. A practical way to respond is not complicated. The moment you feel tingling, gently move your feet, rotate your ankles, or stand up and take a few steps. Notice how quickly the sensation fades when circulation improves. That immediate response is useful information because it tells you the system is still reactive. And when a signal improves with simple movement, it often means there is room to support the system early. This is one of those signs that can feel small, but carry meaning when repeated. You do not need to overreact, but you also do not want to ignore a pattern that keeps showing up. The goal is not to label it as a problem, but to understand what your body is adjusting to. Because once you see that clearly, your response becomes calmer and more effective. And the next sign is one you can actually see, not just feel, if you know what to look for. Sign number 3. Changes in the color of your feet. You sit at the edge of the bed in the morning, letting your feet rest on the floor. There is a quiet moment where you are not rushing, and your attention naturally drops downward. And for a second, you notice something slightly different in the way your skin looks. Maybe your toes seem a bit paler than usual, or slightly grayish in certain light. It is subtle enough to question, and easy enough to ignore if you are not really looking. But the color of your feet is not just about skin tone or lighting. It reflects how much oxygen-rich blood is reaching the surface of that area. When circulation is steady, the skin tends to look warmer, with a healthy and consistent tone. When blood flow slows or becomes uneven, that tone can shift, even temporarily. And those shifts often appear first in the toes, where circulation has the longest distance to travel. What many people miss is the pattern, not the moment. If your feet sometimes look pale, slightly bluish, or uneven in color, especially when cold or still, it may be linked to reduced flow. This does not automatically mean something severe, but it does mean the system is under a bit more strain than before. A common mistake is to only notice color when it looks normal again. But the changes in between are where the real information lives. A simple habit that helps is to observe your feet at consistent times. Look at them in the morning, after sitting, and after walking for a few minutes. Notice how the color changes with movement and warmth. If the tone improves after activity, that is a useful sign that circulation is still responsive. And that tells you your body is asking for more regular stimulation, not more worry. This kind of awareness is quiet, but powerful. Because once you start seeing these shifts, you stop treating your body like a mystery. You begin to understand how it reacts, how it adapts, and what it needs more of. And that kind of understanding builds confidence over time. Now, the next sign moves from what you see to how your body repairs itself. Sign number 3. Changes in the color of your feet. You sit at the edge of the bed in the morning, letting your feet rest on the floor. There is a quiet moment where you are not rushing, and your attention naturally drops downward. And for a second, you notice something slightly different in the way your skin looks. Maybe your toes seem a bit paler than usual, or slightly grayish in certain light. It is subtle enough to question, and easy enough to ignore if you are not really looking. But the color of your feet is not just about skin tone or lighting. It reflects how much oxygen-rich blood is reaching the surface of that area. When circulation is steady, the skin tends to look warmer with a healthy and consistent tone. When blood flow slows or becomes uneven, that tone can shift, even temporarily. And those shifts often appear first in the toes, where circulation has the longest distance to travel. What many people miss is the pattern, not the moment. If your feet sometimes look pale, slightly bluish, or uneven in color, especially when cold or still, it may be linked to reduced flow. This does not automatically mean something severe, but it does mean the system is under a bit more strain than before. A common mistake is to only notice color when it looks normal again. But the changes in between are where the real information lives. A simple habit that helps is to observe your feet at consistent times. Look at them in the morning, after sitting, and after walking for a few minutes. Notice how the color changes with movement and warmth. If the tone improves after activity, that is a useful sign that circulation is still responsive. And that tells you your body is asking for more regular stimulation, not more worry. This kind of awareness is quiet, but powerful. Because once you start seeing these shifts, you stop treating your body like a mystery. You begin to understand how it reacts, how it adapts, and what it needs more of. And that kind of understanding builds confidence over time. Now, the next sign moves from what you see to how your body repairs itself. Sign number 4. Small cuts or cracks that take too long to heal. You notice a small crack on your heel or a minor scrape near your toes. Nothing serious, nothing that would have worried you years ago. You expect it to fade in a few days like it used to, but a week passes, then another, and it still looks almost the same. Not worse, but not really better either. Just lingering quietly. Healing depends heavily on circulation, more than most people realize. When the body repairs tissue, it sends blood carrying oxygen, nutrients, and repair cells to that exact spot. It is like sending a full team to fix something small before it becomes bigger. But when circulation is a bit slower, that delivery system loses speed and efficiency. So the repair still happens, just at a pace that becomes noticeable over time. After 60, this shift becomes more common, especially in the feet. The vessels there are smaller, farther from the heart, and more dependent on daily movement. If movement decreases or circulation becomes less responsive, healing can slow down in subtle ways. Many people assume it is just thinner skin or aging alone. But the deeper layer of the story is often about how well the body can deliver what it needs to repair itself. A practical step here is not complicated, but it requires consistency. Check your feet regularly, especially the heels and between the toes, even when nothing seems wrong. Keep the skin moisturized, avoid tight pressure points, and stay attentive to small changes. And most importantly, keep circulation active through simple daily movement. Because when blood flow improves, healing often follows more naturally. This is one of those signs that asks for patience, not panic. The body is still doing its job, just asking for better support. And when you respond early, small things tend to stay small. That is the quiet advantage of paying attention at this stage. And the next sign brings a different kind of sensation that many people describe as simple fatigue. Sign number 4. Small cuts or cracks that take too long to heal. You notice a small crack on your heel after a shower or while putting on your socks. It does not look dramatic, and it probably does not hurt enough to demand attention. A few years ago, you might have expected something like that to disappear on its own in no time. But now it seems to stay there, day after day, quiet, stubborn, and slower to close than it used to. And that kind of slow healing is one of the body's more practical warning signs. What many people do not realize is that healing is a circulation job as much as it is a skin job. When the body repairs even a tiny injury, it sends blood loaded with oxygen, nutrients, immune cells, and repair signals to that area. You can think of it like a maintenance crew being sent out with the right tools, materials, and timing. If that delivery arrives quickly and steadily, The skin usually repairs itself with very little drama. If the delivery is slower, the repair still happens, but the process becomes noticeably delayed. This matters even more in the feet, because they are already working at the far end of the body's delivery system. They rely on smaller vessels, longer travel distance, and more help from regular movement to keep that blood flow active. After 60, when circulation becomes a little less responsive, and daily movement often becomes a little less frequent, that healing speed can quietly change. Many people blame age alone and stop there, but age is often only part of the picture. The deeper pattern is that slower healing in the feet may be revealing slower support underneath. There is also a mistake people make here that sounds reasonable on the surface. They only pay attention if a wound becomes painful, swollen, or obviously infected. But before anything gets that far, the body may already be showing you that repair is taking more effort than before. A crack that stays open too long, a sore spot that lingers, or skin that seems to break down too easily is useful information. The sign behind the sign is not just the cut itself, but what the delay says about circulation and tissue support. A smart step today is to start treating the feet like an area worth checking, not just washing and forgetting. Look at your heels, your toes, and the spaces in between when you dry off or change socks. Use a simple moisturizer regularly, avoid tight shoes that rub the same spot, and notice whether healing improves when you move more consistently through the week. And if a small wound is not improving, keeps reopening, or begins to look worse instead of better, that is worth bringing to a clinician sooner rather than later. Because the sooner you read this signal clearly, the easier it is to protect comfort, mobility, and confidence in the steps ahead. Sign number 5. A heavy feeling in your feet after minimal walking. You walk through the grocery store or down a short hallway at home. Nothing demanding, nothing that would have felt like effort before. But somewhere along the way, your feet begin to feel heavy. Not sharp pain, not exactly weakness, just a dense kind of fatigue that settles in earlier than expected, and you find yourself wanting to sit down sooner than you used to. Many people assume this is simply muscle loss or getting out of shape, and while strength does play a role, that is not always the full explanation. What you are often feeling is the effect of circulation during movement. When you walk, your calf muscles act like a pump, helping push blood back up toward the heart. If that pumping action is less active or less efficient, blood can linger more in the lower legs and feet. This creates a subtle buildup of pressure in the tissues. The feet begin to feel heavier, more congested, and less responsive with each step. It is not dramatic, which is why it is often dismissed. But when this feeling shows up quickly, even during short walks, it is a sign worth noticing. Because the signal is not just fatigue, it is how your circulation is behaving under light demand. There is a simple way to respond that does not require anything complicated. Instead of relying on one longer walk, try shorter and more frequent movement throughout the day. Even a few minutes of walking every hour can reactivate that natural pumping system in your legs. You can also practice gentle heel raises while holding onto a chair, allowing your calves to assist circulation. These small actions may seem minor, but they directly support how blood moves through your lower body. And this is where many people are surprised. The body often responds better to consistency than intensity, especially after 60. You do not need to push harder, you need to move more regularly. That shift in approach tends to reduce that heavy feeling over time. And the next sign may look unrelated at first, but it connects to this same underlying pattern in a different. Sign number 6. Skin that stays dry, rough, or cracked, no matter what you apply. You notice it while putting on socks, stepping out of the shower, or rubbing lotion into your heels. The skin on your feet feels rougher than it used to, almost thick, dry, or stubbornly tight in certain spots. Maybe the heels keep cracking, the soles look dull, or the skin seems to improve for a day and then slide right back. A lot of people treat that as a simple cosmetic nuisance and move on. But when dryness becomes a pattern instead of a moment, the body may be saying more than it seems. Healthy skin depends on more than what you put on it from the outside. It also depends on what the body delivers to it from the inside. Blood brings oxygen, nutrients, and repair support that help skin renew itself, stay flexible, and hold moisture more effectively. When circulation in the feet becomes less efficient, that renewal can slow down in subtle but visible ways. The outer layer gets drier faster, the deeper support gets weaker, and the skin begins to lose some of its resilience. That is why some people moisturize faithfully and still feel like the problem keeps coming back. The lotion may help the surface, but it cannot fully replace what the tissue is not receiving underneath. It is a bit like watering the top of a plant while the root system is still not getting enough support. The result is temporary improvement without lasting stability. And after 60, that pattern becomes more common because circulation, skin renewal, and tissue hydration all tend to shift together. There is another reason this sign matters more than it looks. Dry, cracked skin is not only uncomfortable, it can become an entry point for irritation, soreness, and slower healing. What begins as rough texture can quietly turn into splitting, tenderness, or repeated breakdown in the same areas. That is why the signal behind the signal matters here. The problem is not only that the skin is dry, but that the feet may not be getting the steady support needed to maintain themselves well. A good place to start is simple and realistic. Keep using a plain, reliable moisturizer, especially after bathing and before bed, because the surface still matters. But combine that with better circulation habits, such as short walks, ankle circles, heel raises, and avoiding long stretches of stillness. Choose shoes that reduce rubbing, and pay attention to whether your skin looks healthier during weeks when you move more regularly. That pattern can teach you a lot about what your body responds to. And this is one of those moments where quiet consistency usually beats expensive fixes. People often look for a stronger cream before they look at the deeper pattern. But the body usually rewards steady support more than dramatic solutions. And if this kind of practical explanation is helping you make better sense of what your feet are telling you, that is exactly why staying connected here can be useful over time. Because the next sign shifts from skin and texture into something many people notice only at the end of the day. Sign number 7. Swelling that builds up by the end of the day. You take off your shoes in the evening and something feels different. Your feet look slightly fuller, your socks may have left marks, and your skin feels tighter than it did in the morning. It is not dramatic swelling, nothing that seems urgent, just a subtle puffiness that was not there earlier. Many people shrug it off as a long day or too much time on their feet. But when this becomes a pattern, it is often the body showing how it is handling circulation over time. Throughout the day, gravity is constantly pulling blood and fluid downward into the legs and feet. Under normal conditions, the body manages this well by pushing that fluid back up through movement and healthy vessel function. But when circulation becomes a little less efficient, that return flow slows down. Fluid begins to linger in the tissues, especially after long periods of standing or sitting. And by the end of the day, that buildup becomes visible and noticeable. This is where many people misunderstand what is happening. They think swelling only matters if it is severe or sudden. But mild, consistent swelling is often an early signal that the system is working harder than it should. It does not mean something is immediately wrong, but it does mean the balance between flow down and flow back up is shifting. And that shift is worth paying attention to before it becomes more persistent. A simple way to observe this is to compare your feet at different times of day. Notice how they look in the morning versus the evening. Try elevating your feet slightly for a few minutes and see if the swelling reduces. Pay attention to whether short walks or movement throughout the day make a difference. These small checks help you understand whether your circulation is responding or staying sluggish. What matters here is not reacting with worry, but responding with awareness. When you understand that swelling is often about flow, you begin to support that flow more intentionally. You move more regularly, avoid staying in one position too long, and give your body the signals it needs to keep things moving. That is how small adjustments prevent larger frustrations later. And now that you have seen all these signs, the next step is understanding how they connect into one clear pattern. How these signs quietly connect into one pattern. At first, each of these signs may have seemed separate. Cold feet, tingling, slower healing, dry skin, heaviness, mild swelling. Each one easy to explain on its own. Each one easy to dismiss in the moment. But when you step back and look at them together, a pattern begins to form. And that pattern is often easier to understand than people expect. The common thread running through all of them is circulation. Not a dramatic failure, not something sudden, but a gradual shift in how efficiently blood moves through the lower body. After 60, this system often becomes a little less responsive, a little slower to adjust, a little more dependent on movement. And because the feet sit at the far end of that system, they are often the first place where those changes show up. What feels like separate symptoms is often the same system speaking in different ways. This is where many people miss the bigger picture. They treat each sign individually instead of recognizing the shared cause underneath. They buy different creams, adjust small habits, or ignore the signals entirely because none of them feel urgent on their own. But the body rarely sends multiple signals at once without a connection. And when several small signs appear together, they often point to one system asking for better support. A useful shift is to stop asking, "What is wrong with this one symptom?" and start asking, "What pattern is my body showing me across the day or week?" Notice when multiple signs appear at the same time, such as cold feet with tingling, or dryness with slower healing. That combination tells you more than any single signal on its own, because patterns reveal direction, and direction is what helps you respond calmly and effectively. And this is where the video starts to move into a more practical phase. Because once you see the connection, the focus is no longer on symptoms alone. It becomes about what supports circulation consistently and what quietly works against it. You begin to shift from reacting to understanding. And the next part is where many people, with good intentions, actually make things worse without realizing it. The common mistake: reducing movement when the body needs it most. You start noticing your feet feel heavier, colder, or more tired than before. So naturally, you begin to move a little less to avoid discomfort. You take fewer walks, sit down sooner, and choose rest over activity more often. It feels logical, even responsible, like you are protecting your body from strain. But this is one of the most common traps people fall into after 60. It makes sense on the surface, and that is exactly why it is so easy to miss. When something feels uncomfortable, the instinct is to reduce what triggers it. But circulation does not improve with stillness. It depends on movement to stay active. The muscles in your legs and feet act like pumps that help move blood through the system. When those pumps are used less, the flow becomes slower, not better. So what begins as a protective decision can quietly reinforce the very pattern you were trying to avoid. Less movement leads to slower circulation. Slower circulation leads to more heaviness, coldness, and fatigue. And those sensations then encourage even less movement. This cycle can build gradually over months or years without feeling dramatic at any single point. But over time, it changes how the body feels during even simple daily activities. The more effective approach is not to push harder, but to move smarter and more consistently. Short, gentle, frequent movement tends to support circulation far better than long periods of inactivity. Standing up every hour, walking for a few minutes, or doing simple ankle and calf movements can make a real difference. You are not forcing the body. You are reminding it how to function more smoothly. And that kind of reminder, repeated daily, often has a stronger effect than people expect. This is not about discipline in the strict sense. It is about direction. The body is not asking for intensity, it is asking for regular signals. And when you give those signals consistently, things often begin to shift in subtle but meaningful ways. That is how you step out of the cycle instead of reinforcing it. And the next part is where we turn that understanding into a simple plan you can actually follow this week. What to start doing this week to support circulation without overcomplicating it. This is usually the point where people expect a complicated answer, a special device, a strict routine, or a long list of things they now have to do perfectly. But in real life, especially after 60, the body often responds better to simple signals repeated consistently. That matters because most circulation support is not built through one big effort. It is built through small actions that tell the body, again and again, to keep flow active. The first habit is regular movement, but not in the all-or-nothing way people often imagine. A few minutes of walking several times a day can do more for circulation than one longer walk followed by hours of stillness. That is because the lower legs need repeated activation to keep helping blood move back upward. Even standing up every hour, taking a lap through the house, or marching gently in place can help. The goal is not to impress yourself, but to keep the system from going quiet for too long. The second habit is using simple foot and ankle movements when life gets sedentary. Rotate the ankles while sitting, flex and point the feet, raise and lower the heels while holding a chair, or gently spread the toes inside your shoes. These may look small, but they are direct signals to the muscles and vessels that support circulation in the lower body. After 60, smaller movements count more than people think, because consistency becomes more important than intensity. And when simple actions are easy to repeat, they are far more useful than routines that sound good and never happen. The third habit is creating better daily awareness without becoming obsessive about symptoms. Notice how your feet feel in the morning, after sitting, after walking, and by the end of the day. Notice whether warmth improves with movement, whether swelling is milder on active days, and whether skin looks healthier when you move more often. That kind of calm observation turns your body into useful feedback instead of background noise. And honestly, that is one reason people who stay around this channel often begin noticing important patterns earlier, because they learn how to watch their bodies with more clarity. What I like about this approach is that it protects dignity as much as comfort. You are not handing control over to fear, and you are not waiting passively either. You are building a steady relationship with your own body, one practical decision at a time. That may sound modest, but modest habits done regularly often create the most reliable change. And the next topic matters because there is one easy mistake that can quietly cancel out a lot of this progress. The quiet habits that cancel progress without you realizing. You make an effort to move more, stretch your feet, and stay aware of the signals. But even with those good intentions, something still feels off at times. Your feet still get colder than expected, or that heavy feeling returns sooner than it should. And that can be confusing, because it feels like you are doing the right things. What many people do not realize is that a few quiet habits can work against them in the background. One of the most common is staying in the same position for too long without noticing. Sitting through a full movie, standing in one place while doing tasks, or even resting with little movement for extended periods. When the body stays still for too long, circulation slows down again, no matter how well you moved earlier. The system responds to what you do consistently, not what you did once in the day. So long gaps of stillness can quietly undo the benefits of short periods of activity. Another habit is wearing footwear that restricts natural movement or circulation. Shoes that are too tight, stiff, or press on certain areas of the foot can limit how blood flows through smaller vessels. Even socks with tight bands around the ankles can reduce comfortable circulation over time. This does not mean you need special shoes, but it does mean paying attention to how your feet feel during and after wearing them. Comfort is not just about softness, it is also about allowing the foot to function freely. There is also a subtle pattern related to temperature that people overlook. Letting the feet stay cold for long periods without responding can cause vessels to remain constricted longer than necessary. Over time, that repeated constriction can make it harder for the body to shift back into a warmer, more open state. Simple things like warming the feet gradually, avoiding sudden cold exposure, and keeping them comfortably covered can help. These small adjustments may seem minor, but they support the same system you are trying to improve. What matters here is not perfection, but awareness of what works against you quietly. You can be doing several good things and still feel stuck if a few unnoticed habits keep pulling in the opposite direction. The goal is not to control everything, but to reduce friction so your efforts actually count. And when you remove what interferes, progress often feels easier without adding more effort. Now, the next step is learning how to tell the difference between a mild signal and one that deserves closer attention. When a mild signal stops being mild and deserves closer attention. Most circulation changes do not begin as emergencies. They begin as patterns that are easy to minimize because they stay small for a while. A little coldness here, a little tingling there, a bit of swelling by evening, a slow healing crack that seems manageable. That is exactly why people tend to wait too long before taking the pattern seriously. Not because they are careless, but because the body often whispers for a long time before it speaks more clearly. The important thing is learning the difference between a signal that asks for support and a signal that asks for evaluation. A mild signal usually comes and goes, improves with movement, and stays fairly predictable from week to week. A more concerning signal often becomes stronger, more frequent, less responsive, or more disruptive to daily comfort. It may start lasting longer, appearing in new situations, or showing up alongside other changes that were not there before. That shift matters, because the body is no longer just showing a tendency, it may be showing progression. For example, cold feet that warm up after walking are different from feet that stay persistently cold no matter what you do. Mild evening swelling is different from swelling that becomes more noticeable, more one-sided, or more difficult to reduce. Occasional tingling is different from numbness that begins affecting balance or confidence while walking. Dry skin is different from cracks, sores, or spots that keep returning or do not seem to close properly. The body is not asking you to panic here. It is asking you to notice when the pattern changes its tone. A good rule is to pay attention to three things. Is the sign becoming more frequent? Is it becoming more intense? And is it affecting how you function in daily life? If the answer to any of those starts becoming yes more often, that is a reasonable time to bring it up with a clinician. You do not need a dramatic crisis to justify asking a smart question about a body pattern that is clearly shifting. In many cases, early attention protects comfort and independence far better than waiting for certainty. And I think this is one of the most respectful ways to approach aging well. Not treating every signal like disaster, but not treating every signal like background noise either. There is a mature middle ground, where you observe calmly, act early, and ask for help when the pattern stops behaving like a minor one. That kind of discernment is a real advantage after 60. And the next topic pulls everything together into a simple plan for the coming week. So this becomes practical, not just informative. A simple 7-day reset to help your feet feel more supported again. If all of this has made sense so far, the next question is usually very practical. Where do I begin without turning this into a full-time project? That is the right question, because most people do not need a dramatic overhaul.
They need a short and realistic reset that helps them reconnect movement,
Warmth, observation, and consistency. And a simple 7-day plan is often enough to make the body's pattern easier to read. For the first 2 days, focus on one thing above all else. Do not stay still for too long. Stand up at least once every hour, walk for a couple of minutes, and gently move the ankles when seated. You are not chasing exercise here. You are reintroducing circulation signals throughout the day. That alone can begin changing how your feet feel by evening, especially if heaviness or coldness tends to build when you sit too long. Small repetition matters more than one ambitious effort that leaves you tired. On days 3 and 4, add direct support for the feet and lower legs. Do a few slow heel raises while holding a counter or chair, rotate the ankles, and flex and point the feet with control. After a shower, or before bed, moisturize the heels and soles. Then take a quick look at the skin, the color, and any sore spots. This is also a good time to notice which shoes feel supportive and which ones seem to leave your feet more tired or restricted. The goal is not perfection. It is gathering useful information while helping the body do its job a little better. On days 5 and 6, pay closer attention to timing and patterns. Do your feet warm up faster after movement? Do they look less puffy at night? Do they feel lighter after several active hours spread across the day? Notice whether tingling appears less often when you interrupt sitting sooner, or whether your skin looks less stressed when your routine is steadier. This kind of tracking is simple, but it helps you separate random moments from real body patterns. And once you can see a pattern clearly, your next decision usually becomes easier and more confident. By day 7, the real goal is not perfection. It is clarity and momentum. You want to know which small habits actually help your feet feel warmer, lighter, steadier, and better supported. This is educational, not medical advice. And if symptoms are sudden, severe, or new, talk to a clinician. But for many people, one calm week of consistent attention is enough to reveal what the body has been asking for all along. And in the final topic, I want to leave you with the bigger reason this matters. Because this is not only about feet. It is about protecting independence with more awareness and less fear. If this video helped you, the next one might reveal something important about your body. Take a moment to watch it now. You may notice something you've been ignoring.